Coming up next on Arizona Horizon, a mid-year update on Arizona's economy and what we can expect for the rest of the year. And we'll discuss what business wanted and got from the state legislature this past session. Those stories next on Arizona Horizon.
Arizona Horizon is made possible by contributions from the Friends of Eight, members of your Arizona PBS station. Thank you.
Good evening and welcome to Arizona Horizon. I'm Ted Simons. A lawyer representing a former staff member at the Attorney General's office filed a formal complaint today against Attorney General Tom Horne, alleging that Horne violated campaign finance laws on a number of occasions. The report was filed on behalf of former AG employee Sarah Beatty. Beatty says in the affidavit that she was told to work on getting Horne reelected while she was on the job, and Beatty also says that she witnessed others in the AG's office work on campaign-related materials, and that a top aide drove a state car to a Horne campaign event. Now, in a prepared statement, Horne says that some staffers did do campaign work, but on their own time, and that meetings and other campaign-related activities were either conducted during lunch breaks or after work hours. ASU economists say the state is still at least 2 years away from a full economic recovery. Here now to discuss the mid-year economic forecast is Dennis Hoffman of the W.P. Carey School of Business. Good to see you again.
Great to be here, Ted.
All right, full economic recovery, maybe 2 years off. Why not next year?
It's the same forecast we've given, I think, the last several years. We're not seeing it. At some point, you need some really hard evidence. And this rigidity of employment growth in the state has really been problematic and certainly a puzzle if you think about the way we approach modeling, and that's based upon both logic and historical data. We have no historical precedent for this type of sluggish job behavior in the state of Arizona.
We can see other states, though. How do we do compared to those states?
Well, in comparison to other states, say in 2013, we're a top 10 percentage job grower, and that's the good news. The other kind of good news, I think, is that seems to be a characteristic of the western states. The states from the Rockies west did pretty well. They're pretty much all in the top 10. Texas, of course, is number 5. But interestingly, Utah and Colorado, 2 and 4. And between them, number 3, California, as far as percentage growth in jobs.
I keep hearing that everyone's leaving California, and we're hoping to get some of those folks who are on their way out.
Yes, and I modeled that, by the way. I had that in my income tax model, and it didn't show up quite as much as I'd hoped it would.
It sounds like we've regained, only 56% of jobs in the downturn, according to your guys' report here. The U.S. has regained in the 90th percentile of jobs.
Right.
Why is the U.S. doing so much better than we are?
Well, part of that is, we had 250,000 construction jobs at the peak, and now we're about half of that, and that's not going to come back anytime soon. So our fill then, as we get back toward the peak, will likely be in a different job mix or somewhat job mix. I'm not saying we won't generate construction jobs. I'm just suggesting, for a number of reasons, we're not going to go back to that 250,000 level.
Is that a good thing to have a more diverse mix of jobs?
Well, a lot of rhetoric today and over the course of the last several years on diversifying the Arizona economy, getting away from growth as a driver. Frankly, construction was an important picture in Arizona because swarms of folks wanted to move here and live here. And if you're a population magnet, you're going to be relying on construction. And when that magnetism goes away, then you struggle. And that's, of course, what we've seen in the last 5 years. And I think it's less that we've lost our magnetism and more that folks just aren't moving. The mover rate from state A to state B anywhere in this country is below half of what it was prior to the Great Recession. So we're just not getting many people.
Well, that's a good entree into the Arizona real estate market. We had Mike Orr on last week, and he basically said demand was down, and he didn't see it likely to return until next year. And then he says it might return with a bit of a bang.
His thesis is an interesting one, and some of it comes from local demand, and that is that you have all of these defaulters. And there's, for many of them, kind of a 7-year problem in terms of being able to qualify for financing. So what Mike is seeing is that some of these people will be able to borrow over the next couple of years. The other part of his thesis, and we're all scratching our head about this, is, you know, what about the youth? At what point will they start actually, you know, dipping their toe in this water of housing? You know, historically, we all aspired, you know, to get to a point where we could jump on the housing train and start building housing equity. And many of us did that very well. That is not something that the young folks yearn for right now, very clearly.
I think he calls it family formation, and it just isn't happening out there.
Right.
So, all right, so Arizona price is mostly flat right now. We're still up from the bottom, like 84 some odd percent from 2011.
Absolutely.
And again, you think maybe these foreclosures, once everyone kind of gets to their 7-year trial period here, once they get through all that, will those folks be still interested in buying homes?
Well, that is the big question. Will they still be interested in moving to Arizona? Are we the land of opportunity, or perceived as the land of opportunity, the wide open spaces, the attraction of the climate and lifestyle? That is what brought most of us here, I think, over the last 2, 3, 4 decades. And so the question going forward, does that allure remain? And if so, when do we see it manifest itself?
It sounds like right now, good sectors, finance, food service, healthcare, not so good, construction, manufacturing, government, and retail.
The government's had a tough time.
It has. Retail's had a tough time too, huh?
Yeah, right. Well, I think we're buying goods and services differently. You know, the consumer attitudes, though, I think are interesting to watch. And I have a scoop for you, Ted. The Rocky Mountain Poll, I believe, will be released tomorrow for the most recent consumer confidence survey that the folks at Behavioral Research are putting out. And, you know, last year at this time, it was kind of mediocre, and I was pretty optimistic, so I didn't think too much of it. But I was actually wrong. The last half of 2013 was pretty much predicted by this spring poll. Well, guess what? They're much more optimistic in this poll, as you'll see when this poll comes out tomorrow. So I think it's an interesting and maybe a harbinger of good things to come in Arizona. We can all hope.
That's the Rocky Mountain poll that comes out tomorrow. Confidence up. What
confidence is as high as it's been since the onset of the Great Recession. Now it's not back to record levels or anything like that, but folks, according to this poll, are having a little easier job finding jobs, and we're not seeing that in the numbers yet. But maybe it's a reflection of what they're hearing. You know, they have kids that have been unemployed forever, and now the kids are finally getting job offers, or relatives getting job offers, or relatives aren't losing their jobs. You know, hopefully it's good news.
Let's talk about the nation as a whole.
Right.
This seems like a slower recovery than past downturns. Of course, this was a pretty steep downturn compared to previous bad times. Why is unemployment still where it is? Why aren't we seeing better numbers there?
Oh, I think in terms of unemployment in the overall labor market, you have a host of factors working here. I'm one of these folks that is of the firm belief that of the vast majority of the changes in labor force participation are being driven by age. 10,000 folks a day crossing the 65 and over line. And that's a big part of it. But the overall employment and health of the labor market, those folks that really want jobs and that are struggling, they're up against a skills gap. They need better education and skills. And it's really dynamic. They can be skilled and trained in a certain direction today, and my goodness, tomorrow robotics takes their place and they've got to evolve into another niche. So when you acquire skills, you're not done. You have to be constantly vigilant on acquiring more and different skills if you're going to maintain employment.
The old dog, new tricks theory comes into play. What about gross domestic product? Why is that not any better?
It has been a struggle. This is the weakest recovery, certainly in the post-war period. It's a dearth of consumption, in my opinion, although there's a lot of voices that suggest it's both taxes and regulation. Let me just say, venture into a place where I think almost all economists agree, and that is if we had a dose of immigration reform, trade policy, and probably corporate tax reform, I think all of those things would be very, very conducive to boosting this economy. But the biggest problem with businesses today, or with small businesses, I firmly believe, is they don't have enough folks coming in the front door.
Well, you mentioned consumption a couple of times there. Why is personal consumption spending not any better than it is?
We leveraged up. I think part of this is you have to think about what happened in the 80s and 90s. We leveraged up. We took on a lot of debt as individuals. My generation probably led the charge. You know, the mantra was, he who dies with the most toys wins, Ted. And we really engaged in that competition. We borrowed, we borrowed, we borrowed, we bought, we bought, we bought. Now, kind of with this rude awakening of 2008 and 2009, we've kind of looked at ourselves in the mirror and said, you know what, I think we have enough things.
Okay, so if personal spending, maybe even national spending, is lower, does that mean that our debt's getting better? Personal debt, national debt?
Individuals have deleveraged significantly. Yes, debt is the new four-letter word, Ted.
Okay.
We're ridding ourselves of debt. You know, you turn on AM radio at night and folks preach at you about being debt-free in 3 years. Well, that's good for certain individuals, but in the aggregate, if there's less spending, we've got to recognize that's dampening on the economy. And as a result, we have to look for other markets. We've got to sell abroad. We've got to change our behavior. We can't just sell locally. We've got to have more export-based businesses.
Last question before you go. Are we ready to change our behavior?
Wow. I don't know. I'm seeing things that worry me. We need an immigration policy. We need to be welcoming nationwide. By the way, I'm talking nationwide about getting immigrants into this country. I think Canada has done very, very well at this, getting knowledge people in. We also have to be cognizant that we can't just sell to local communities. We can't just sell to folks in the United States. We have to have an export-based strategy.
All right. Well, that consumer confidence number suggests that confidence...
It'd be good. It'd be something to look at.
Yeah, confidence rearing its head.
That would be wonderful, wouldn't it, Ted?
All right. Good to see you, Dennis.
Thank you, Ted.
Nearly 5 million people a year travel to Arizona from all over the world for a chance to peer into the sublime expanse of the Grand Canyon. It's hard to imagine that any of them noticed the giant Navajo sandstone slab jutting from the earth just outside the park's eastern entrance at milepost 268 on Highway 64. A plaque was once affixed to this stone. It honored the victims of one of the gravest air tragedies in American history. On the morning of June 30th, 1956, TWA Flight 2 and United Airlines Flight 718 left Los Angeles within minutes of each other. One was en route to Kansas City, the other for Chicago. They would collide over the Grand Canyon. Both airlines and the government would recover, identify, and return home as many of the victims as the rugged wilderness would yield. 67 of the TWA victims, 63 unidentified, are buried in the Citizen Cemetery in Flagstaff. Services were performed by Roman Catholic, Protestant, Jewish, and Mormon clergymen. 29 unidentified victims from the United flight were interred below a memorial in the Grand Canyon Cemetery on the South Rim. Public outcry from the accident resulted in the creation of the Federal Aviation Agency and a modernization of the country's air traffic control system. Nobody knows what happened to the plaque that once paid tribute to the victims of Flight 2 and 718, but their deaths are honored by the safe arrival of the many tourists that fly to the Grand Canyon each and every day.
The state legislature is considered by many to be business friendly, but how much did Arizona business and industry officials succeed in getting their agendas through the recently completed legislative session? Joining us now is Glenn Hammer, President and CEO of the Arizona Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Good to see you again.
Great to see you, Ted.
What did the Chamber want to see this session, and were you pleased with the results?
We were pleased with the results. The big ticket item was the governor proposed in her State of the State to provide a sales tax exemption for manufacturers. At the time, Arizona was one of only about 12 states that taxed electricity for manufacturing. This is something that had come up on a number of the deals that the Arizona Commerce Authority was working on. We were very pleased that we will now join the vast majority of states and no longer tax electricity on manufacturers. That I would say was one of our key victories this session.
And I know that the argument for this was that it bolsters job creation. Sure. How so?
Well, when you take a look at all the things that Arizona has done over the last 4 or 5 years, I'd argue that on tax, tort, and regulatory reform, we've done more than any other state. The good news is that we're in the game. When it comes to these big job announcements, whether it's Tesla or Apple, we're a finalist. But one of the areas where we have been lagging is how we treat electricity on manufacturers. We don't want to be on the bottom tier of states. So this is the type of thing that just makes us that much more competitive.
And yet, there are counties, especially rural counties, that needed that revenue base, and some of those folks were not very happy, and including some pretty conservative lawmakers there at the legislature. They say that, they rely on that, and it's not fair that they're losing that, especially when they couldn't get it reimbursed by lawmakers.
Well, at the end of the day, no one seems to complain when big ticket job announcements occur, and I think you have to look at this in a dynamic nature. So whatever revenue is quote unquote lost from this tax exemption, think if it helps in if it helps in expanding existing jobs for a company or attracting a big ticket manufacturer to the state. Think of all the tax revenue we're creating in terms of personal income tax, property tax, and sales tax. So we think if you look at this in a dynamic way, it's in everyone's benefit, including the state taxpayers as well as local and city taxpayers.
And smaller counties as well, because they're the ones that raise the biggest fuss on that.
Well, people are always, we understand the concern, but when I think you look at the numbers, this is something that will benefit all the different counties and cities. And the way this did go through is that there was an accommodation made. This sales tax exemption will apply only on the state level. I submit, I think there will be extraordinary pressure for any locality that wants to land a big ticket job expansion to conform to the state law, but we'll see how that plays out. You
referred to Apple, and there was a $5 million tax credit there if you install a certain amount of renewable power capacity to supply your own plant. Everyone calls it the Apple bill, and critics are saying this legislation was specifically designed to benefit Apple. First of all, do they have a point? Secondly, does it matter?
Well, we want to be competitive for all of these big ticket deals. And what's happening, Ted, is that there's a lot of companies out there when they're looking to locate to a state, and they have all sorts of different options. And we're competing with Texas, we're competing with other states that have very attractive features. One of the things that a number of companies now are looking to do is to have a greener energy supply. So this is a policy that it's going to benefit over time more than one company. For us at the Chamber, we look at a sort of a basket of policies. We've been very strong proponents of broad-based tax, regulatory, and tort reform, but we also do need to have tools in the toolbox. And you look at Texas, which I believe Dennis mentioned, they have a very aggressive toolbox. Their deal closing fund is much more robust than ours, and I believe Arizona needs to be very aggressive when it comes to competing for these big ticket items.
And since we're talking about the legislative session, again, some lawmakers down there, and these aren't liberal folks, these are very conservative folks, they were saying it's simply not fair, this kind of legislation.
Well, when you take a look at the bills that you mentioned, they passed, I believe both passed with broad bipartisan support. The electricity exemption bill passed with very few dissenting votes. But there were other bills that passed as well. Like, for example, Representative Olson had a bill that would index our income tax for inflation. So, you know, it was a combination of bills. But in terms of making us more competitive in the manufacturing field, we absolutely did a few things this session that moved the meter.
I know the Chamber was very much emphasizing education this session. Are you happy with what you got? And what were your thoughts when attempts to overturn Common Core seemed like there was a new shot being fired every day? What were your thoughts on that?
We were surprised. I mean, we call those standards the Arizona College and Career Ready standards. The business community for years, decades, has been saying we need standards that really match the skills that are necessary in the workforce. We just heard from Dennis. There is, even with the economy coming back, it's vitally important for kids that are graduating from our high schools to be prepared for the universities and the world of work. There's a lot of misinformation out there. We want to make sure that these are Arizona standards. We do not want something that is imposed from the federal government. The standards that we have, Ted, the truth is they were adopted in Arizona in 2010. There wasn't a lot of controversy. We feel that the focus for these standards needs to be on proper implementation. We need to get a testing regime in place that adequately covers these standards. And but it was obviously a controversial area this particular session.
Indeed it was. Also controversial is the idea of the tax cuts and the credits that we've talked about earlier, and the impact on revenue and how that impact on revenue impacts education, K-12 and post-secondary.
Sure.
Are there concerns that this is lost revenue here that is not going to educate? Good for Apple, good for maybe Tesla, maybe not so good for Mrs. Smith's fourth grade class.
Well, we need to have a healthy economy to make sure we have those revenues to put into education. And the fact is we've been increasing the amount spent on education over the past several years. This past year, even with all the debate and controversy around Common Core, we were able to get an additional $8 million for the new assessment. There was more money put into data systems. We've continued to fund our third grade reading program. But another important point, Ted, here is let's not confuse just pouring dollars into that does not simply translate into academic achievement. If that were the case, districts like Newark, New Jersey would be number one. We need to make sure that the new dollars that we're putting into education are done in such a way that it improves student achievement.
So if dollars from before the recession, we still aren't there in terms of returning those dollars to education. If there is an attempt to return them, you're not necessarily against it. You're just saying, let's find an avenue that makes sense?
Absolutely. And for example, we have about 2,000 schools in the state of Arizona, including charter schools. About 500 of those schools are ACE schools, including a number in lower economic areas. Lisa Graham Keegan, our former state superintendent, is leading an effort with us and the Tucson Hispanic Chamber to make sure that every student in Arizona has access to an ACE school. We know there is magic happening all across this state. A story that has not been told as much as it should. Out of 19,400 high schools ranked by U.S. News and World Report, one state in the country had 3 in the top 10. That one state is Arizona. 2 are basis schools, and 1 is University High School in Tucson. We have a better sense today than we did 20 years ago of what works. The key is to replicate those high-performing schools.
Is the business community, the chamber, are you ready next session to be as pushy, or even more so, when it comes to education, education reform, and education funding?
Ted, we are ready to rumble. We are ready for this. This is incredibly important. My greatest surprise since being at the Chamber now for about 8 years was worst economy since the Great Depression, and yet you will hear from virtually every industry, from every part of the state, from every sector of the economy saying that they need skilled workers. Mm-hmm. If we can do a better job of educating our kids, we're going to see every economic indicator in this state move forward at a faster rate, and we're committed to doing that.
All right, Glenn, it's always a pleasure. Good to see you. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
And tomorrow on Arizona Horizon, the results of a survey on providing affordable space for artists and creative businesses in Mesa. And we'll learn about a new full-body imaging system that tracks changes in your skin. That is Tuesday evening, 5:30 and 10, right here on Arizona Horizon. That is it for now. I'm Ted Simons. Thank you so much for joining us. You have a great evening.
Arizona Horizon is made possible by contributions from the Friends of 8, members of your Arizona PBS station. Thank you.